What's up, Brandon Lewis? There we go. I can hear you now. I had to unmute you. I just bragged about myself figuring it out, and then I had you on mute.
Hey, I think you're doing a fantastic job. If I can hear you, that's the only thing that matters.
That's right. Look at you you're affirming me, you're uplifting me. Hey, so real quick, I've known you for a long time, and I know you've been in a couple of different things, but you are a small business owner. And before we talk about why you started the Tennessee Conservative News, I have a strange feeling that may be where we spend quite a bit of our time. Let's talk about the small business stuff. What do you do for small businesses right now, or what kind of small business do you own? How do you want to jump off on that topic?
So, Clint, I appreciate you having me here. I really like what you do. I've admired your marketing work for a long time. I enjoy being in my little niche. I do similar things to what you do in a way. It's just I'm in a super niche, which is repaint contractors. And I work at the Academy for Professional Painting Contractors. I've worked with about 450 plus painting contractors in 6 different English speaking countries now, ranging from $50 million for standalone units to startups, and then national franchises, both at the individual and the corporate level. We have a national industry event, which ours was the second biggest in the industry, and this year it's the first biggest because everybody else canceled theirs because of COVID, and I did not. And so I've worked in that space for the past 7 years after I sold my painting business. And when I finished running Congressman Desjardins' reelection campaign and sold mine, and I've been a political hermit and focused on this exclusively for the past 6, 7 years up until a few months ago.
Well, I have a question I was going to ask you before we got off. I might as well jump on it now. I wish people could see my table because I'm very anal about looking organized, but I have like doctor's prescription that looks like written all around me. One of the questions I was going to ask you before we left at the end was, I know we're talking about small business, but real quick, why have you never run? Because you've run parallel to a lot of other people running for office. Have you ever thought of running? Did you run?
I ran for office and lost, thank goodness, when I was in college. I ran for city council and I lost by a handful of votes to a gentleman named Homer Bundrum. And you lose to a guy named Homer Bundrum, you've done something. Of course, I didn't know anything about, politics. I would go on to write a book about certain elements of it, fundraising, but I didn't know what I was doing. And if I'd done a little bit of opposition research, I would have discovered some things that probably would have allowed me to win that race. But thankfully, the Lord had another plan for me, and that was to move to the Scenic City because I love this town. It's where they're going to plant me one day. And I met my lovely wife, and it's just a great place to run a family. And my biggest reason for starting this, TennesseeConservativeNews.com is to freaking keep it that way, because I see a lot of trends that should concern small business owners and concern citizens alike inside Hamilton County and Chattanooga.
All right, so because I want to make sure I keep it flowing as well as good as I can, stay on the small business side for one more second.
Let's do it.
Well, because I know you help small businesses, whether it's in a particular area or not, but you're a small business owner as well. Mm-hmm. So that's the part that's always intrigued me. I have empathy for small business owners. I have owned businesses. I started my first business when I was 24. Me and a partner started a commercial cleaning business. I quit my job with 0 accounts. 2 weeks later, we had 15. And when I sold my half to him, we had like 35. But I was 25 years old when I was in the middle of owning that. So I have an affinity for helping small businesses as well. But differently than you, I think you're very focused. You're a super focused person. Am I correct? I'm a little scattered.
I can get, once I get it in my mind that X is where I'm going, I don't care how long it takes me to get there. And so I tend to be, if you do any type of personality test, I think my top 3 skills are goal attainment, organization, and a couple other things. And on the very bottom is like diplomacy, office politics, empathy. I have a lot of business empathy, but there's a lot of empathy things. I'm really good at fixing a problem. I may not have any feelings about fixing that problem while I'm fixing it, but we'll get that problem fixed. And so, yeah, I would say that's probably accurate. That's probably accurate.
Okay, so with that being said, what do you struggle with then as a business owner? Because I think you're pretty creative, and I lean towards the creative side of things, and usually the super focused, goal-oriented, task-oriented person doesn't pair up well with the creative side, but you are creative. So what do you not like about owning a small business, or what do you struggle with?
I would say I struggle. I often struggle with hiring and managing people. And right now I've got just a grand total of 3 employees, even though I work with hundreds of small businesses. I've set up a business that's one to many for the most part, outside of my platinum clients, where it doesn't matter if I have one person in the painters purchasing group, if I have one person in our digital services group, or if I've got one person in our gold group, it's the same amount of work. So I'm very much they say that people either manage processes or they manage people. And I'm a lot better process manager than I am a people manager. I could bring my employees in here. John's on the other side of this wall here. They'd be like, well, that's damn right. This guy is terrible.
I've got managing me. My first word that I had written down was processes, because I know that you are a process guy. I don't know if you know him. I think he's a mutual acquaintance. He's a friend of mine, Eric Buchanan. He's an attorney. He is a process guy. I mean, he has built his business on continually looking at, evaluating, pulling apart, putting processes back together, because I think, and I wish I had more of what you're good at in me, because I have some successes in business and failures, but inside that process that I'm ignoring as a small business owner is cash.
Yeah, cash. And that's, if you could think about it, for the most part, what I do now is I bring franchise grade systems to independent painting contractors. So if someone brings me a problem, well, number one, there's some problems in business. You have your sales system, customer retention, customer reactivation, B2B referral sources, going after commercial repaints, job costing, bonus programs, all the little bitty pieces that make a business run. They're just a bunch of systems knit together. I have created, I don't know, 30 or 40 business processes, kitted them up with videos, templates, instructions, and checklists. And so basically, if you do this stuff, you will get a positive outcome. And I'm not very good at coaching to the person as much as I'm a process person. We're going to identify projects and next action items. And if you do these things, I promise you, you'll get a good result. You may not like me as we go through the process, but eventually you'll love me because the results will be there.
Yeah, I am a big believer on systems is only as good as the user. So here's what I mean. When I was doing, I had Connect Marketing for about 8 years. And so I had companies from time to time that would hire me to come in and do some sales consulting, or they said, listen, I just need somebody to sit in a room and brainstorm with me. And I said, sure. They would pay me to come sit. And I found that people would build these big systems, and I'm not going to mention any names. There's a local company. I'm still good friends with them, but we had a really hard conversation because they were building this big dynamic system, this process, but none of his people, it had so many bells and whistles that his people were checking out. They were like, I don't need 9 notifications. I don't need 17 tabs. I need 3 tabs that do these 5 things. And I told them that. They didn't like my response. So I was only in the room for, 2 or 3 days. But what happened is they found out the hard way. So do you run into that a lot? A lot of times people overcomplicate the process.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. The overcomplicating the process, overthinking the process is rampant in small business. The way I look at it is this: something beats nothing every time it's tried. Something beats nothing every time it's tried. And when I will look at small businesses, I will see that these fundamental business systems are missing. And then we'll go to plug in something that I've created from scratch. And invariably, my dumb painters make 3 times as much as my smart painters, because my smart painters are trying to figure out 15 different ways it won't work. They're trying to put their own little spin on it. Meanwhile, the dumb painter's already cashed the check. He's working on his next job. He's moving on to the next system. So often what people need is to shave off about 20 IQ points and to just get it done. So 80% perfect, 100% finished. And if you get a chance to circle back, we can be efficient, by all means, but let's first be effective, and getting to effectiveness is the first stop.
I did a video, a little solo podcast a while back, and I've said it more than once. I think the hardest people to help sometimes are those that are successful. And that's also why I've said that to me, the most dangerous thing when you become successful is success, because we start coaching. You almost have to have such a humble, you have to have a humble spirit. Your ego has to be in check. If I hire Brandon Lewis to come in and say, yeah, you got to do it like this. This is my suggestions.
Yeah.
I've made, my company makes $9 million a year. I've got 14 employees. I know what I'm doing. Well, then do it. But they don't, a lot of times people don't like being told what to do.
No, they don't. And luckily I am, to make a very sexist comment, I'm in a 97.3% male dominated industry. And most of them, I grew up very poor, and from a very, hell, we didn't even have a collar. I would say we were blue collar. I don't know if we didn't even have a skill. My family didn't have a skill to be blue collar, hardly. And like a trade, we didn't even have a skill that was as good as a trade. And so they're a little rough around the edges, and so am I. So it works great with my personality for the most part. I don't think I could take my same coaching style and make that work in another place. But men, for the most part, if you can show them this is missing, this is not here, and you can explain to them practically why this is broken, most of the time they'll come around. I have not been as successful in instances that require a lot of affirmation and emotional feelings. Ask my wife. I have no emotional intelligence to speak of.
You're struggling just to tell me how unemotionally intelligent you are. You're
I can't even articulate it. I'm just not. I'm not set up like that. But my wife is, and so when I run into situations, I'm like, let me use when you become one flesh, and your brain changes. And then when I've got an issue that requires some sensitivity, I bring it to my wife, and my wife explains to me how I should think about that situation and consider it, and then it helps me inform my decisions.
I told somebody a long time ago, they had a habit of sending an email, and what do you think about this idea? I don't like it, do this. Now, in their world, the email was straight to the point. I like you, you like me, we're doing this. The person on the other end, it was inside the radio industry that I used to be in, a while back. Yeah. The person on the other end would be like, I think I made them mad. Look at that response. I'd be like, that's who they are. So I just went to him and said, look, just say, hey, these are my thoughts, or thank you at the end. Just little bitty things. Soften it up. Soften it up.
Soften it up. I mean, I've had you're trying to get things done. I'm a very much a project next action step, goal attainment, and that soft stuff I can miss the mark on a little bit.
Are you a rigid process? I know you teach processes to other people, but are you the practice what I preach, or you just preach it? I mean, do you live by process?
I practice what I preach to a large degree because I have to. A lot of my business runs in a kind of a recurring schedule on an annual basis. There are deliverables, things that I have to get out the door. I've settled into a sequence of campaigns and live events and enrollment periods and launches. And so there's a lot of stuff that if I don't have it, if it's not automated, if it's not process driven, if we don't do it the same way every time, either I can't serve as many people or I can't charge what I charge to make that happen. So I've tried very hard to give people a lot of value that's affordable for our industry, that if I were trying to do this, customized for every people, there's no way I could help 135 painting contractors in coaching and several dozen in digital at the same time. I'd have to hire too many people. So yeah, I try to stick with it, but I fall off the horse like everybody else. And I get a little lazy in the summer because it gets real slow around here. And so I play a little hooky, but then winter I get my comeuppance because it's all busy.
If you're sitting here listening to this or down the road and you hear the word processes a lot, or a task-oriented projects next step, it's easy to think you say you're not empathetic, you don't have empathy, but I think people show empathy in different ways. Some people do it by, come here, Let me hug you.
Yeah.
And other people do it by what you're doing. You do have and I hate to use this word with you now, but you do have a soft spot for business owners, like you were saying.
I do. And I'll give you a perfect example that makes me uncomfortable. And this is kind of a weird thing to share, I guess. One of our members named Keith Zaffron wrote a book about how to be a good dad no matter what type of dad you had. I may be missing a word there. And I'm reading it on the plane, and he's going to speak at one of our events. And I read this all of a sudden. I'm like, I don't have any issues with my dad. I don't have any issues with my dad. I don't have any issues with my dad. And then I realized growing up, until I was about 13 and moved in with him, I'd never received a positive word of praise my entire childhood. Like, I just started thinking back. And so at some point in my mind, I determined I just didn't need it. And if I just get all of my gratification from what I thought about what I did. And so now when we have events and things and people talk about how their businesses have completely changed and their lives have changed, they've gone from barely making it to buying their dream home and sending their kids to private schools when they were in bad school districts. And they tearfully tell everybody how big of a difference our programs make. It makes right now, my armpits are sweating. I mean, I get uncomfortable. I don't like it. And I've never even listened to I shouldn't say this. I've rarely listened to more than about 10 seconds of a video testimonial. I collect them, but I have them transcribed and I have Jennifer put them together because it makes me uncomfortable. I almost have to walk out of the room. And so I feel like the way I help people is by fixing things. And that's one way I think Donald Trump, because we'll probably get into some politics here later. He's one of those people where he is not the best at vocalizing how he cares about people. His thing is like, if I fix their problems, they'll like me. And that's true for some and not for others.
But also, there's this book called The 5 Love Languages that I've read a bunch of times. I also believe that's true at work. I think everybody has different love languages at work too. I've said this 100 times. If you're a sales manager, most of the time your salespeople will be motivated by money, but it's not the money, it's what the money either represents or can get them. But very few people are strictly motivated by money alone. And it seems like what you're doing for small business owners is your way of wrapping your arms around them, saying, I've been poor, I've been a struggling business owner. I'm not going to hug and kiss on your neck and tell you that you're awesome, but I'm going to give you some stuff where you can go hug and kiss on somebody else's neck and take care of your family.
Well, and it also, it's a lot different when I see them in person and I can joke around. Often I'm on the phone and I've got 30 minutes, 45 minutes, 60 minutes to get a whole lot of stuff done. And if I spend 20 minutes of that, petting the dog and talking about the bowling trophy and all the things we do, in person or over the phone, it's just going to end up wasting a lot of their time. So I tend to be
their time, their money's valuable. They're paying.
Yeah, I've gotten a little bit better at my words of affirmation because I realized that that's important to my wife, and I just don't. I never saw it growing up, and I never practiced it that much. But as I've gotten older and a little bit more sentimental, and you really, it becomes clearer what's really important and who's really important. As I've gotten older, I think I have done a better job of expressing that to people.
Well, and when people get off, this one thing I've learned, because you and I have different delivery styles. I think it's important when people get off the phone to realize they've gotten some good feedback. They've got something that they can put in action and go make some changes on, but they also want to feel good. And feeling good doesn't mean you got to tell them they're great, but they just got to feel it was a good use of their time and feel positive because they are spending money with you. And
exactly.
And eventually you want them to spend money with you again.
Exactly. So, I try to do that. And I guess when I wrap calls up, when we get there, I always tell something like this: listen, you've got nothing but a world of opportunity in front of you. And I say, there have been people that have recovered from drug addictions who are technologically illiterate and then in their late 60s or 70s that turned their painting business around the last 3 years before retirement. You can't do anything about the past, but you've got every skill that you need to succeed. And I know you can do it. I give them encouragement. But I'm not it's something I could brush up.
You just gave life encouragement there, man. You just take painting out of it, and that's what you just told everybody. You're a life coach.
Well, that's a reason I hate all this victimhood culture crap that floats around, whether it's in business or in politics, because if someone sat down in front of you and they had a bunch of problems, you would never in a million years say, you know what, buddy, you just can't make it. You know what, it's somebody else's fault. You know what, if somebody in Washington does something, you might have a chance. You know what, everywhere you go, somebody's trying to put you down. Hell, even if it was true and it's not, you wouldn't do that to somebody unless you were trying to plant the seeds of failure in their mind. Not only is it
unless that's
not
part
work.
of your process.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just doesn't work. I mean, people have to know that if they do A, B, C, and D, they've got a hell of a good chance at success. And I believe everyone does.
So before we jump off on this topic, you alluded to it. You grew up poor. Where did you grow up at? What part of the country?
I grew up, I went to Arab High School. That's spelled Arab, pronounced Arab, in Alabama, and a place at the foot of the mountain in Guntersville called Dog Holler. And it's because people would drop their damn dogs off. And it's a bunch of ramshackle trailers. Dad couldn't read or write. He had clubfoot, had facial deformities. He was the last of about 13 kids. And one old sink in the kitchen. We had one sink in the kitchen. It belched out red well water for like 5 minutes, and it got clear. And you brush your teeth, shave everything in the kitchen, and it was just unpainted wafer board ceilings. The place had burnt down, and Dad got a hold of it and kind of put some paneling over the burnt stuff, and that's about as far as we got, and it stayed like that. And he passed on when I was 19, and so I mean that's just. And then before then, I lived in a little single wide trailer on the side of the state road. My mom worked most of the time, and I was more or less raised by my grandparents next door. And so I mean that's, we were just the white trash growing up.
So how did that translate? Did you know kind of in your teenage years, this cycle, I'm going to break out of this, I'm going to own my own business, or did that come later on in life?
I got lucky with a couple of things. Mainly men and women who would not tolerate my behavior and my self-doubt. They just wouldn't have any of it. Whether it was whipping my little butt in school every other day, and I got paddled every other day. If it Coach Flack, Dr. Garrett, I started training martial arts when I was in seventh grade, and he was an ex-scout sniper Marine trainer at Parris Island. He happened to be a veterinarian, and he took me under his wing, and I started working there. So really, a lot of what I would refer to, my dad was a good father. But he was like an older roommate. He was in his 60s.
Yeah.
And he just, I'm going to New Orleans with Tommy. All right, son, tell me when you're coming back. I was 13. I mean, I was like a feral cat, and he just let me go do whatever. I mean, I never did anything too awful bad. And then I went to school. I fell in with some good people, some good kids, and they were all going to college, and I didn't ever think about college. And then all of a sudden, I started applying for scholarships, and I took the ACT 7 or 8 times and went from like a 26 to a 32. You can learn how to take that test.
Wow.
And
by the way, a 26 is not bad.
Yeah. But I mean, just kept going, and finally I got that 32, and that's what paid for a faculty scholarship at Jacksonville State. And I had a couple friends going, and away I went.
What kind of martial arts did you take?
I did Hapkido and Akiyamaru Jiu-Jitsu. One of the big things that came down the pike was when UFC first came out, and the Gracies were whipping everybody. And,
oh yeah.
But that was before you could strike. Is that right? No, you could strike. There was something missing. There's something different about it.
Was there any leg kicks?
Yeah, you could do. I think you could do most of it, but it just didn't seem as I don't know if you can wear your gi now, or even if people would want to.
They were wearing their gi back when the Gracies were in it, though.
Yes, they would. You just wear whatever you wanted to in there, which they used to choke people out, which is why they wore it.
Yeah.
But it was neat. And but that was back. I can remember when I did grappling when it first came out. There were 2 weight divisions. There was 165 and down, and 165 and up, and that was it. And I weighed like 125 pounds. I weigh like 137 now.
Wow.
And so the only way I could win a match was I was in really good shape, and it would take me 45 minutes, and I would get in there, and I would just ride the clock out until they got sweaty and they made a mistake. And I could do a rear choke, a guillotine, or an arm bar. And that was it. Because I was too little to do anything else. And that's the only way I could win.
Do you still train?
I go to the sports barn. I do high intensity interval training. I go to another place in Ringgold, Our House.
Yeah, I'm good with it. Our House Studios with Christy. Yeah.
Yes, Christy, very nice lady. I like that facility. I love the sports barn. Dawn and what my wife trains with Carolyn down there.
Mm-hmm.
I love the gym, man. And I'm gonna shut up after I say this. The gym was the first place I ever went in my life where there wasn't drama, where there wasn't bullying, where there wasn't all the crap that's in school.
Yeah.
And it was just peaceful, and I got to exercise, and everybody was nice. And so ever since then, I have been a gym rat, not like the big bulky kind or whatever, but at any rate,
yeah.
I've gone to the gym my entire life. I love it. It's one of my favorite pastimes.
I've been a gym rat myself. I ran a gym for a couple of years, and the thing I love about the gym is what you just said. It's your space, even when you're there with other people. And if you want to compete with other people, you can.
Yeah.
But a lot of times it's just, I did this last time. What can I do this time? Type of mentality that I think is very beneficial to people. My son is 20. He's almost 22, but he year and a half ago, he went and played rugby because I played when I was younger.
Mm-hmm.
And then he got into the gym. He's lost like 60 pounds. He's loving it. And he was always awesome in the gym. I mean, he was a good athlete, but he wanted to look different and feel different. And so the gym can free your mind as well as your body. And so I'm glad to see you doing it. As a matter of fact, there's a guy that trains down at Christie's, Big Chris, with a giant beard, does boxing. He goes down there every now and then.
I think I've seen that guy down there boxing.
Well, he and I sparred.
He comes from the gym.
I went and boxed in 3 years ago, the World Ringside Masters tournament out in Kansas City. And he and I sparred to get ready for that, me, him, and my cousin. And he got me kind of ready to go to Kansas City and fight in that tournament. And I was 50. I just turned 50, which was fun. I mean, at 50, you don't think you're going to be challenged.
Yeah.
And it was fun, so I didn't do the grappling.
I keep going. I'm thinking I want to do it, but I've got 2 young girls, and man, by the time you do your work at work, and by the time you go home and you get in the gym, and then you want to see a couple of your old buddies, and I've got a ton of friends. I mean, I'm about to go 2 weekends to a cabin, and I'll have 15 of my best guy friends. It's just guys. And by the time you keep up with your relationships and do everything else, I'd love to go do MMA or something again, but I don't have the time.
Yeah.
And I'm probably, as little as I am, I'd have to wrestle the kids, and I don't want to have to do that.
No, I wrestled my son. He is about 6'1", and he weighed 260, and now he weighs about 195. But we would wrestle all the time, and I got the best of him. But towards the end, he didn't know this. Okay, and then we're going to talk politics. Everybody, hold on. But he didn't know this. But we would be wrestling, and I would get him in a spot, and I could feel how strong he is. Country strong. He's the kind of guy that you look at and go, he looks strong.
Yeah.
Not because he's muscles, even though he is muscular.
Yeah.
But he didn't know this. I would have him in a move, and I would be given literally 100%. I had nothing else to give. He would be given like 80, I could tell, and he would be like, I just can't beat you, Dad. I'm like, that's true, man. And I keep thinking, thank God he did not try. Oh my God. He would have hurt me so bad right there.
Well, that's why I've got girls. So hopefully I can still win.
Nah, my daughter's 16. She could totally take me too now. I've got guns for that and a dog. That's what I do at this point. So you're this busy guy. You're a small business owner. You help small businesses. You've got a great family. You've got all of this story that you're developing. And then because you have nothing else but all this free time, you decided to start a news outlet. Why in the world did you start a news outlet?
In the last debate, I think Donald Trump said something very interesting to Joe Biden, and it was this. I ran because of you, Joe. Mm-hmm. I ran because of you. And I feel like I've started this news organization because of it, and it all originated with the lockdowns. I led that protest on the Market Street Bridge, the one that we had here, the lockdown protest, the first one that was held in Chattanooga. I'm sitting in my office watching all this stuff unfold. And like everyone else, first couple of weeks, you're like, well, this might be serious. And then as the data comes in, you're like, well, it doesn't look that serious. And as the data continue to come in, hell, it's done nothing but tell the same story for the last 8 months, more or less. I'm like, we are losing our religious freedoms. They've shut down churches, but you can't go to church on Easter Sunday because of Mayor Burke's ordinance. But by golly, you can go to Walmart. You can't go worship Jesus Christ, but you can go get a hamburger through the drive-thru. You can't take communion. And I've watched my friends' businesses and my members' businesses get closed up. Almost all of my friends that'll be at the cabin, I'd say, are probably like 80% self-employed. And you watch the damage that's being done and how quickly people roll over and give up their liberties. And I was just like, what? So I did that protest because some people contacted me and it was not organized very well. And I thought, if this thing fails and no one shows up, these bureaucrats will think that no one cares about their freedom in Chattanooga. And so we got to have a decent showing. And we had a good showing. We had about 150 to 200 people show up on the bridge, hundreds of cars. I don't know if you know how hard it is to get conservatives to a protest.
Oh, yeah.
It's really hard.
Yeah.
And to do it in the middle of a pandemic when all this social pressure and shaming is around is even harder. But I got out of that, and then I thought to myself, and I hate protests. I don't go to protests. I felt so uncomfortable being there. It's not how I have ever participated in the political process. And I said, I got to do something. And I didn't know what to really do. And to back up, and then I'll finish this point, I led the fight against the property tax 10 years ago. And a lot of people don't remember that. And we got it down from like 30-something million to $10 million. And what it taught me is that if you don't proactively follow stories, and if you don't start covering them and talking to people about them in their infancy, by the time they get halfway developed, you might as well call them done.
Yeah.
And that's what happens in this town. Things get started that are not good for our community. They rock along, and then they become just part of it, and then we have to live with it forever. And so the real reason I started the paper, I think, was this. You got a bunch of people on the bridge, right? All we want is our jobs and our churches and our freedoms back. That's it. We're not asking for anything special. We just want what's ours according to the Constitution. And the coverage we got was so negative in the local media. And then a few weeks later, and one of the best examples is one of the reporters at the Times Free Press wrote about how reporters were so noble and they wear masks, and all of us, jacklegs are out there, mouth breathers on the bridge. And he didn't wear a mask at the protest. He didn't report that because they're hypocrites. And then the Black Lives Matter stuff kicks off. They topple statues, they break windows, they graffiti things, they're disrespectful to the police, glowing coverage. And this is local. You don't have to go to CNN for all this stuff to be shown. And so I thought, somebody's got to cover this stuff fairly and ask a few conservative questions.
So do you cover it, or do you have people covering, or do you take articles and curate them? How does that work?
Right now, we are doing one state story, one national story, and one local story. We do curate, not all, but some of the state and local, or state and national things from an organization called the Center Square, which is like a conservative alternative to the Associated Press. If you look at most of the publications around here, they're just full of things in the Associated Press. And buddy, it is, I mean, you read these articles about, for example, Amy Coney Barrett here recently, and they're all mad because she served on a Christian school that didn't want openly gay instructors.
Mm-hmm.
And it read in there their own interpretation of the Bible. I'm very tolerant of however anybody wants to read their life, but if you follow it and you read it, like, there ain't a lot of ways to interpret it. It's not like it's in between the lines. It's pretty plain. And if you're going to practice your faith according to the text, I mean, but they try to paint her as if something awful is going on. But at any rate, the Center Square, and then we're covering a lot of local stuff on our own, because that's really the things that get overlooked. For example, we're about to have this article come out tomorrow about panhandling and litter and trash.
I saw one of your posts on that.
Yeah, and I'm just like, when did Chattanooga go from being the scenic city that is aligned to being clean and beautiful and around tourism And now they don't cut the grass, they don't pick up the trash, and they're homeless people's on. I can see 3 to 6 panhandlers on my way to my house every day.
Well, I wanted to say this real quick. I want to throw some big concepts out there because
Yeah,
I think, well, I think it's important. I think, first of all, you brought up the Amy Coney Barrett in the school she worked at. If I'm not mistaken, it's a private school.
It's a private school.
Okay. So to me, that kind of stuff, if you want to talk about her beliefs, to me, once you become in the public sphere, I'm okay with talking about what you believe.
Yeah.
I think that's important. And you ought to be able to tell us why you believe it and all that. But when you're talking about what they believe at a private school, that's a private school. That's on the school. I'm not saying it has to live up to your standards. But the other thing that has really frustrated me, and it has really, I don't think it'll it's not going to change anybody. The hypocrisy that you just pointed out, though, is so on both sides. And here's what I mean. Here's what I'm saying. I was on a podcast 2 weeks ago. We have gotten to a point, and I said this, and it was a little pushback with Monica. We have gotten to a point now to where if I criticize Donald Trump, I voted for Donald Trump. But if I criticize Donald Trump, if I don't agree that everything he says in his rhetoric is good, I get eaten up by people that agree with me on most everything. In other words, team politics is killing us. Donald Trump is not going to be around forever. Our leaders are not supposed to be these magical heroes. We're not supposed to give them the loyalty that we give the belief system behind the party that we support. In other words, I wish the Democrats, and I've said this a bunch, I wish the Democrats would spend as much time holding their people to the same standards as they hold the Republicans to. And I wish Republicans would do the same. If we would keep our own house in order, then when I start having a conversation with somebody on the other side of the aisle, there's mutual trust there because we both know I don't agree with everything Donald Trump says, but I agree with him enough to support the movement. I know you don't agree with everything Joe Biden says, but if you tell me that because I support Trump or because someone supports Biden, that you have to agree with everything they say forever, that's just not common sense.
No, I agree.
And I think we're missing that.
I've got a long list of stuff I don't like about Donald Trump. He spends too much money. All of them do. The Republicans do. I mean, we used to have conversations in this country about the deficit and about debt spending. We hadn't had that conversation 12 years.
Yep.
In any type of significant way. I can't remember the last time when it was really an issue. The deficit spending hasn't even come up as a campaign issue. I wish he had a better personality. I mean, that's all kind of stuff. I don't like a lot of this. I don't think we need to be doling out. When lumber prices are triple, and this happens in a lot of sectors right now because they are paying people so much to sit at home, they can't get folks to come back to the mill. That's a problem. I mean, who would have ever thought that if you gave people more money to sit at home than to work, that they might choose to sit at home? Well, by golly, I would.
Absolutely.
Somebody write me a big enough check, I'd leave here. I mean, how long is it going to last? I think
it also started bothering me a little bit when people were saying, if you don't believe in the Black Lives Matter organization, then you're the problem. I have tons of black friends. I'm the white guy that says I got black friends. When I got married, I had 9 groomsmen. Well, 4 of them were African-American or black guys. We've known each other for 30 and 40 years. They're not white or black. They're buddies. They're friends.
Yeah, exactly.
So what bothered me was I should be able to say, of course, Black Lives Matter. Of course, the lives of black people matter. But I don't like the organization at all because until recently, when they changed their website, I've got screenshots of it, they supported a Marxist mindset.
Yeah.
And so it's okay to, that's what I guess what I wrote down here when you were talking. It's almost, we've come into a world where it's either or, and it's not.
Well, the thing that they do that they're real good at, and this is just leftism 101, you demoralize people, you demonize people, you silence speech. And the way you do that is you give people a take it or leave it extreme position to accept. And if you differ with it in any way, they will shame you in social circles. They will threaten your employment. They will try to boycott your sponsors. And it takes someone who is comfortable in their own skin and very comfortable in their views. Like, for example, the Tennessee Conservative News. I told my wife when we started this, almost thought about writing a book, how to become a racist in 30 days or less, because I assume when we start covering the issues of homelessness, when we start covering the issues of public housing, when we start covering the issues locally of inner city violence, you will have to talk about matters of race openly, and people will not like it. And I think the Lord blessed me in some ways, in that I have never worried about what anyone else thought except for my close friends and family. And if it means that we can make, if it means that somebody has to come after me because we have a candid, factual conversation about a very touchy issue, fine. You know, I'm not gonna lose any sleep over it. And then meanwhile, everybody else can kind of nod silently and go yes. And then maybe over time they'll actually, you know, stick their head up out of their hiding hole and say something. So yeah, they put you in these positions that they set the rules of engagement, and you can't possibly win.
You can't accept the premise of their conversation a lot of times.
No, you can't accept the premise of the conversation. Yeah. That's what gets us in trouble.
And that's what I said to Monica and some other folks in the past. I think the one thing that changes everything is relationships. And what I mean by that is, if you see people posting stuff and you think it offends you, like if you vote for this person, everybody is this. Well, if you voted for that person and I'm a friend with you, then all of a sudden you think I'm that, but I know you. I've had lunch with you. You know that that's not who I am, and I don't think that's who you are. Mm-hmm. And once you actually know somebody, I think it's hard to consider them, either if they're black that you think they're like that, or if they're white, you think they're like this. So I encourage people to have conversations that are not so public. I mean, I don't mind having this conversation or statistics, but go have the hard conversations with a friend of yours that comes from a different perspective. The other thing that I think conservatives could do better is something that is a little touchy. I think conservatives have done a decent job, and they've gotten better at it, but is listening and acknowledging the fact that everybody's America is different on how they were raised. You grew up in a different America, Brandon, than I did. Yeah. Way different. I mean, we were not separated by thousands of miles or continents, dude. But if I were to stop your story when you were 19 and my story when I was 19, it would look like we were two separate families. I mean, and we were, but I mean, different. And I think sometimes as conservatives, we forget to listen to people and acknowledge that the life that this person's living is different than mine, and that's okay.
Yeah, we're myself included, are terrible storytellers, and it's listening and being able to talk in a way that people relate to, and nothing's more powerful than a story, even if it's not true. And I mean, that's a lot of stories have been told over the years that have led to a lot of harm. Words are definitely more dangerous than weapons, because that has to happen first. And so I agree. Conservatives, and I'm going to try to do the best I can at this with this organization, but that's something I'm going to probably need some help and some coaching on.
But I think that comes on individuals, and I wasn't saying that to charge your organization with it. I just think
but it's true. I mean, I see it all over, and when you're a problem solver and you come at it from that direction, you can really. Sometimes it's hard to even understand what somebody's trying to tell you. I'll give you a perfect example. Talking about the just simple stuff like homelessness issues, which I'm afraid that we are becoming a regional magnet. I mean, you lay out a hammock and you advertise it, and you get a bunch of organizations promoting it. People will come to the best place to do that. And we're like, how does this happen? I'm like, well, we kind of know. But at any rate, people are like, well, have you talked to these people? Have you listened to their story? Have you walked down there and fed them lunch? I'm like, I am not equipped to do that. I would not be good at that. And after about 10 minutes, the conversation would probably turn into me drafting up a plan on a piece of notebook paper that they could follow to get their life together, which is probably not going to help them and ain't going to help me, and they're not going to do anything with it. But that would be the only way I would know to practically help, which probably wouldn't get anywhere.
Right.
But people look at that as like, how awful that you think that this is any type of issue at all. and I have a hard time processing it.
But see, to me, though, that's exactly what America's great at. We take what you're good at, along with somebody who is good at feeding. See, I think we forget we have the same goals. And I'm not talking about me and you, just as Americans. We want less people to be homeless. We want mental health to have a solution or some sort of help, a resource. We want the best for people. If we start with that premise and reverse engineer it, that's when we find out, well, Brandon's good at this and Sally's good at this and Clint's good at this. Let's go at the problem with our skill sets. But instead, we start saying, oh, because Brandon doesn't see the problem the way I see it, he's a racist and he hates homeless people, or he's a racist and he hates this, or he's a sexist or, xenophobe, whatever. Insert label here. And, I think homelessness, and it's a different topic, has a lot to do with mental health, which is, I think that's that's a bigger story. I will say just one more thing about race, because I don't get to have these deep conversations too much. I'm usually talking about other stuff. I think, though, if you're a white person sitting out there and you feel, if I say something out loud, how uncomfortable it is, because I don't want to get lumped in as a racist, even though I think sometimes we feel we can't talk about policy. That's what I disagree with people on, is policy, not – it has nothing to do with about race.
I agree. And I'm right.
But I was just going to say, I also think if you're white, you need to understand there are black people out there that are watching the riots, and they're watching people say that's all everybody believes. If you're black, you believe and support that. That's not true. Just like all white people don't support this, all black people don't support that. Everybody is different, but the good people get silenced. Black and white, we get quiet.
What we do, and a lot of this is just, if your ideas are bad, the easiest thing you can do is make everybody quiet and make everybody feel uncomfortable. And while there's some of that going on the right, it's predominantly the silencing, the censoring, the shaming primarily comes from the left. I mean, there's some certain issues that people do it on the right, and you can't have a conversation about anything anymore unless you accept the premise. You got to go into it accepting the premise. And if you don't accept the premise, then they can't even have a conversation. And the problem is, for the African American community, in my opinion, the premise is wrong. The premise is completely wrong as to what, I don't think there's anything systemically racist keeping people back. You got issues like, I grew up without a father in the home until I was 13. That crap's no fun, especially if you're in a low income environment. And when you grow up and you never see a father-mother relationship that's healthy. I did not see a healthy father-mother relationship that wasn't a divorced couple that hated each other's guts until I was 22 or 3. And it changed. I was like, what are these two people doing in this house? They're drinking a glass of wine. They're talking to each other. They're like, they enjoy each other's company. I've never seen that my entire life. And those sorts of things, those are really important things. There's about 4 or 5 others that I think are essential. School choice is another one. And those are things that are practical that you could actually do that would help people. But this whole, notion of, pump the room full of it's somebody else's fault and negativism, I don't see how that helps anybody improve their life.
Well, I think the real danger of telling everybody to shut up if they don't agree with you is you limit the conversation. So how are people supposed to change their minds and grow, right?
Yeah.
If I'm afraid to say what's on my mind, how am I supposed to talk to Brandon and him say something that I go, well, I never thought of it that way. Yeah. If I can't say what's really in my heart, how are we supposed to label the real problems? Because there's real racists out there, and I want to know who they are.
Yeah.
So I can then alienate myself and kind of go, okay, that is a very racist thing.
Exactly.
But when everything is racist, then nothing is racist because it gets lost in the weeds.
Well, the problem is now whenever I hear the term, I just immediately, my gut instinct, every time I hear about a hate crime or every time I hear about racist issues, when I hear about it with a hate crime, the first thing I think is this is staged in a hoax, because it's like 80 some odd, people have done studies. It's like 80 to 90% of it's just bull crap. And it goes on forever until it's discovered that it's bull crap. And then the press cycle immediately ends and they're on to the next hoax. When I hear people say racism all the time, I'm like, gosh, it's just tiresome. And it's so rarely true that I don't know if I would I don't know if I would ever even stop to listen to a true racist story unless it was just patently obvious, because I'm always thinking this is just they're grinding an axe and they're using this as the front part of it. So you got a whole probably about 50 to 40% of the nation that every time they hear that, before long they're going to have to come up with another word because it doesn't mean what they use in the context they use it anymore.
Well, and it does a disservice to the real racist problems out there.
It does.
There's people out there that are really affected by racism, and that's losing the attention and the support that it should have. And I'm also not only do I want to have the conversation so I can grow and we can have that dialogue and we can point out the real problems, but also if we start shutting ideas down about one thing, then we're going to shut ideas down about another thing. And then it truly is 1984 again. Yeah, I mean, not again, but it's 1984, the book. It's where you just have to agree with whoever's in charge. And I think right now it makes me sad because it just makes me sad. I get very frustrated when we bring up topics of especially race, because race now is it's the tag for everything. And if I were to disagree on policy, and I can tell you how it's not, if people out there want to know what I mean, is there's plenty of policies that Condoleezza Rice support, or David West or Alan West supports, or Colin Howell supports. You pick out the African-American person. They have a lot of the same views that I do.
Mm-hmm.
And guess what? They have some views that I'll probably disagree with them on, but it's based off the policy. And yes. I think we miss that conversation, man. And I think we lose it. I hope the outlet you're doing, I cannot wait to read more of it, because I think it's going to be news. Is it all opinionated, or is it going to be hard news?
No. I mean, we primarily, the thing we try to do, which people never do, is we try to ask the questions that the liberal press will never ask.
Like what?
For example, if you look at all of the local coverage about the pandemic, it's all about case counts and who's in the hospital and who's going to die and who's not wearing a mask. They don't run articles about mental health. They don't run articles about depression. They don't run articles about screenings that are missed, that develop into cancer, that people die. I've had a couple of friends have relatives pass away because they couldn't get elective surgeries that later turned into issues that manifest into other problems that cause death. And you have stuff like that that's happening. They never talk about religious freedom. I mean, I've not read an article about religious freedom and shutting down the churches, or First Amendment rights as it associated, the right to gather and things. All that stuff is just, they act like the rights are just, it's beside the point. And it's about what's the scariest thing, what will keep us safe, when most conservatives are really worried about what will keep us free. Viruses will come and go as long as we're alive, but if the freedoms get eroded, and if the freedoms are finally demolished, those puppies are very unlikely to come back. And my biggest
and they run us to places, and they run people to the media. In other words, if you want to go find out anything other than what the mass media is saying, you've got to go to these little side news news outlets like yours, or even Fox is kind of a standalone. But then what happens is they start denigrating your source. Oh, well, that's a right-wing source. Well, so the only
you got to ask conservative. You got to ask conservative questions. Like, example, even just talking about homelessness, it's like a right-wing position, because if you look at cities like San Francisco, Portland, if you look at places like Philadelphia, where they've really just let the entire place go, they don't ever talk about the fact that those places have turned into cesspools, because they've been so permissive with homelessness. And those types of things, I mean, you're not even allowed to talk about it or bring it up. Next thing you know, you're living in some crap hole country and or city, and that you're not allowed to talk about it until it gets so bad there's nothing you can do about it.
Well, Joe Rogan can, because he's so powerful he doesn't care, so he just moves.
I hope. Well, and you can move, but the problem is eventually you run out of places to move to.
Yeah.
So I'm going to have to ask you to do something funny. I'm going to have to ask you to do a monologue. Where do you get your news? I'm going to run into this next room and get my charger. You may have to actually
No,
edit
you're
this
you're
out.
fine. Go for it.
I
I've done
brought it
this
in here.
before. You're good.
All right, 2
Yeah,
seconds.
I'll hide you and then I'll bring you back up. No worries,
All
man.
right.
No, Brandon and I we did not talk about how specific how long we were going to go, and so I'm probably keeping him longer than he anticipated. But to be honest with you, I don't get many conversations that get political like this that often, and it's on purpose. A lot of times, life, there's so much politics everywhere that has smarter people than Clint. Now, Brandon's smarter than me, but smarter people than me involved, that I just kind of let that carry the water on it. But I am frustrated because I have watched us start tearing ourselves apart as a country, and it's almost like we forget that we have friends that are white and black and different economic standards, and we just start talking in these big generalities, and we're like, you know what? And I did pretty good right there, Brandon. So I'll finish that thought up. But we talk in these big general things that if you support Biden, then this is who you all are all the time. And if you support Trump, when in reality, you and I, if you're watching this, not Brandon, but if you're watching this, you know damn well that there are people that you disagree with that are friends of yours, and they don't wish you harm. They don't wish you ill. They would come running if you were in trouble, and they wouldn't care if the person that they were having to fight against were white or black. They would be protecting their friend, and they don't care if you're white or black. And I think we've forgotten that as Americans, that when the call comes in, I don't say what color are they and who they voted for. I've never seen that.
Yeah.
And it frustrates me that we talk to people in such a way now. And I think one of the reasons is a few people have just never been, first of all, spanked as a kid. Second, had to have the look me in the eye as your friend and call me the racist after we've known each other for 30 years. Yeah. Or you've never been smacked in the mouth. Now, with that being said, back to Brandon Lewis doing all the professional stuff. I feel like I got a little therapy there while you were getting your charger.
Well, that was good. Sorry, I thought this thing would last. I think I had it unplugged. I did a screen share earlier today, and I think I just forgot to plug this puppy back up.
I probably kept you longer than you thought too. So
I'm enjoying it. I'm on your time. This is fun. Yeah, I agree. In my heart of hearts, I'm just afraid. Number one, I feel that people's lives are better under the premises and the principles that our country was founded under. We did not get to be the best nation in the world because our ideas are awful. Our ideas are all that have allowed us to achieve this level of remarkable success for people of every color and every sex. But of course, we had some issues in our country's past. I'm not going to downplay that. And I'm not going to sit here and kiss ass about it either. I hate when people spend like 5 minutes trying to talk about how awful everything we did ever was. But it's like your friends. You love your parents because they did a remarkable, for most people, you love your parents or you love your friends because they're remarkable people and they've done remarkable things for you over your entire life. Have they always done the absolute best job possible? No. Do they have some flaws? Yeah. But if you threw away every relationship because it had a rough patch in the past or because it was imperfect, you wouldn't have any. And our country is not perfect, but it's dang near as close as it can get, and it's getting better all the time. So I don't see where all this pessimism and anger comes from.
Well, people are, again, I think it comes from, here's what I think. I think some of that comes from a flaw as conservatives because we have not listened to people. We ignored a lot of times people saying, I didn't go. Some of that empathy that maybe you're not as good at, maybe somebody should have looked at him and go, you know what? People grow up and have a different version of America. Mm-hmm. So how can we fix that? But you don't get there by giving people everything or by giving in to them just because they feel a certain way. That's when we got to fall back on the processes and the systems and the tactical things we can do to fix lives. And I've said it to you before you came on. I think the United States, whether it was on purpose or accidental intervention from God, we put bumpers up when we formed this country.
Yeah.
And it was built by people who racism was not their only sin, and not all of them had the sin of racism, but there was sinful hearts, and racism is a sin of the heart.
Yeah.
But we put these bumpers up on our country that allowed us to move forward not in straight lines and perfect lines, but we fight with ourselves. We grapple with these big issues that are nuanced and just dirty, and we fight and we wrestle with them. And this system that we put in place has allowed us to, sometimes we've taken giant steps forward, and sometimes we've moved inches, but we've moved. And it's because of that framework that allows us now to look back on it and go, we are moving forward and throughout history. And I don't think we can just discount that.
No, they were geniuses when they set up the separation of powers the way they did. Our system is specifically designed so that if the people are taken over by a bad idea and a passion, that it's very unlikely that it will go anywhere. And some of the worst things that have ever been enacted in our country's history have been when one party gets control of all levers of government. And I mean, you saw that when the Jim Crow South came in, that was pushed by Democrats. You saw that when people, when the southern states seceded. You saw that, multiple times throughout history. I mean, I think Obamacare is another example of something that really did so much harm to so many people. And it was when all the power is in one party's hand. Now, fortunately, that only lasts for 2 years, and you hope they can't get too much through before there's a chance to get the House or the Senate back. But I love checks and balances. People always complain things aren't moving fast enough, and I'm always I don't want them to move at all. I mean, we've worked very hard over the last 60 or 70 years to ruin the country, and it's only the checks and balances that have really allowed us to ruin it slower. And
well, I think it's up to us, and I think it's up to us, the people, to guard the door and say ideas that get to pass through. Women to vote, yeah, we should let that through. That's a great idea. Equal rights for people, whether you're white, black, green, or yellow. Yeah, let's let that idea through. That's a good idea to let through. But I think we have this expectation of perfection, and again, I hate to use the word nuance, but there's so many moving parts to this that you're going to have bad ideas peek their head up. And it's our job to go, yes, yes, no.
Exactly. Well, and I hope that, and there's a lot of issues. I mean, civics education, the public school system, and letting the government run it has been a remarkable manufacturer of terrible ideas. And also secondary education. People go in there and they learn how to hate the country. They learn how to think that everything is somebody else's fault. They get introduced in, ideas like critical race theory and Marxism and all its varieties. And they come out after 13 plus 4 years of that, and they've been told the world owes them something. And then they get out and they can't get a job, and they're saddled with $125,000 in debt because nobody told them the truth. And now, instead of looking at the educational system as being to blame, they look at the environment that they've settled in as being to blame. And so we've got a lot of work to do in education, especially. So
do you think that should go back to do you think that should go back to the states? Because right now, the way it works, the federal government gets involved, its tentacles, and they start giving you this thing called money to the states.
Yep.
And as soon as you say, okay, but we don't want that in our school system, or that in anything in our insert here, they go, okay, cool, we're going to take this big chunk of money out of your budget.
Yeah, and that's how they bribe them, and I think that's why organizations like Hillsdale and a few others have been able to run without. They just decided they weren't going to take federal money at all because they didn't want the strings that were attached to it, and which is bad for their students because some of them probably could stand Pell Grants, etc. But a lot of that's funded through private money. But one thing I am passionate about, like here in Chattanooga, and we're going to cover school choice like crazy, because when I worked at Miller and Mott Technical College in the evenings teaching various classes, people who had been in the Hamilton County school system for 13 years would come out of there. They could not write a sentence and punctuate it. They could not write a starting sentence and 3 supporting paragraphs. And here they are in a supposedly college environment. I could not help them. I mean, I couldn't help them, and here they are, and they're going to go into the workforce without any skills. And I'm not talking about work skills. I'm talking about reading, writing, arithmetic. not there. 13 years, and we continue to pour more and more money into this broken system.
If you talk to a teacher that's been teaching for 30 years, but off screen when it's not live or public, they will tell you that it's the education has changed. And I personally feel bad for teachers. And I'm not saying I feel bad for teachers in every aspect. I'm not trying to make this, a thing all about teachers, but teachers are in a system now that they're designed to test their testing skills on the students. Their job performance now is based on how well the kids take tests, and it's not really on their accumulation of. When I went to school, man, I had a teacher named Mr. Fraley, and that guy would keep me after school to work with me. He would slow the class down to move at a different pace. He would tell me this as I got older. Some classes he would speed up, some classes he would slow down. And it was based off the grades of the kids learning what they needed to learn before they moved on. It wasn't this system that, Mr. Fraley, all your students have to fit into this circle or you're going to have a bad review.
I agree. One thing I would love to see teachers do, and teachers speak up about, and I think the teachers union has done education and teachers a huge disservice. I have empathy for the teachers, but at the end of the day, teachers are servants of the public. They do a more important job or a more complicated job, but it's no different than the person when you become an employee of the citizenry. You should really be very, very concerned about the outcomes for the citizenry. And if you know that you're working at a school and people are passing through and getting diplomas and they're functionally illiterate and in some cases actually illiterate, you would think if the concern was about the kids, that there would be teacher-led protests outside the school every day saying, we are ruining people's lives as we are letting them pass through this system. But I don't ever see any of that. If we were really worried, I think, about the children, as we always claim we are,
right?
If they can't get into a school, if they're being exposed to violence and bullying, if they can't read, write, do math, learn basic skills, if they don't know anything about the country, if people really cared about the kids, you would think there would be like a 24/7 protest given the results for $11,000 to $12,000 a year that are expended. We don't see any of that, which leads me to believe instead that in many cases what we've done with the public education system is we've created a government job factory, and we've created a lot of administrative positions, and we've created a lot of teaching positions, but we have not created a lot of students that have the skills they need. And so
see that, and me and you, this was another podcast, man, because this is fun. That comes from leadership. And I'm not saying about our specific leader. I mean, in general, you know this as well as I do. A leader sets the expectations. The problem with it is when you get into government, there's really it's almost this, and it's so much ambiguity. There's no real leader. You can have a superintendent, you can have a president, but decisions are made in this big vacuum of voters and this big vacuum of committees. And, I've got a friend, John Ballinger, says it, and so does Eric Buchanan. The fourth branch of government's the administrative branch that really controls everything. And so I say all that to say, until I think we the people, I always default to it's our fault. I default to I'm not going to blame the teacher because the teacher's in a system that we've allowed to get this way. They have a responsibility. Mm-hmm. So does the administration. So does the superintendent. But at some point in time, they all get to turn back around to us and go, you guys built the system. You let us build this system. That's not a good system.
Yeah, and I agree. And I think it's
a combination. Do you fix that, right?
It's a combination of local civic activism. For example, you have organizations in this town like Unify Ed that are funded by outside left-wing sources, that are staffed by former Obama staff people that want to, put in layers and layers of social justice workers inside the school system. And not only is it it's almost like a union job grab back in the old Russian proletariat. It's not only awful, and we actually, some of that got funded by local liberal people, and they should, frankly, in my opinion, be ashamed that they gave that institution $1. But why there aren't headlines every day about student illiteracy shocks me. Why there aren't headlines every day about children that can't do math, that can't name the first handful of presidents, that don't understand how the branches of government works, that don't know how to balance a checkbook, don't know any type of financial life skills. The fact that that's not the headline on the front of the Chattanooga Times Free Press every day until it's fixed amazes me. Meanwhile, we talk about all this petty Annie bullcrap, like when are we going to build the next failing school? Where's the next failing school going to go? This failing school is in disrepair. Well, we need to build a new failing school over here. Now, not all of them are that bad, but buddy, I live in an area where I can't even send my kids to the school district.
Well, I do too. I send both my kids to private school.
Yeah,
but see, and this is what I go back to what I was ranting a little bit when you were getting your charger. We're the ones that click the headlines. We're the ones that fall for the headlines that make sure that Clint's affirmations have been sustained. I'm in this little echo chamber. So when I read something about how bad Biden is, I click on it. And when Sally or Tom reads something about how bad Trump is, they click on it. They go sell that for advertising dollars to keep it coming in. And so I have got to somehow break this cycle where I really want news. I really want to know the root causes of the problems. Right now, you mentioned problems that most people would probably go, they say big things like, oh, the school system's broke, but they don't know what that means really because it's not reported on. We don't click on that.
No, we don't. And a lot of it is right. If you look at local news, there's nothing to click on the other side, which is what we're trying to build here. Right. Nobody presents the other side. I put it this way. For every time an article runs about the poor teachers and about the insufficient budget, that article and we need to start a new program. We need a new layer of administration. This is the time, boys and girls. If we just raise taxes one more time, if we can just get 3 to 4 more %, buddy, we're going to fix it this time. And for every time a story runs like that, maybe 19 times, you might get one story about 30% of third graders can read at grade level. You might get one of those because people don't like making the school system look bad because immediately everybody's got their grandma used to be a teacher, their sister used to be a teacher.
Well, you get labeled, and nobody wants to be labeled a bad person. I'm not talking about the people involved. We're talking about what you're good at, the systems that we've built.
Systems. And so people the stories don't even see the light of day for people to click on and choose to begin with. And then,
I had this conversation with a school board member, and it gets even more uncomfortable, and we will not make you talk about it right now because I've already had you on way longer than I thought I would. But
you wrap it up whenever you want to, but there's no such thing as an uncomfortable question to me.
Well, I want to have an uncomfortable conversation at some point. Go back to the reason of why the third grader or the seventh grader is not really as proficient at school as they used to be. And why are we asking our school to raise our kids? It's because it doesn't start when they walk in the door. It starts at home. And we as a society think all things start. It all starts with Trump when he was elected. No, it all started with Obama. No, or it starts with the school, or it starts with our church. No, it starts with us. Mm-hmm. And the reason that Johnny may not be able to read, write, and care is because he's going to, and I know you came up like this.
Yeah.
But I work with a group called YCAP here in Chattanooga pretty closely. And they got kids that are going home with nobody there. The lights may or may not be on. Mom and dad may or may not be there. They don't know what they're going to eat tonight. They hadn't had a shower in 2 days, and you want them to sit quiet and learn about diagramming a sentence. And my problem I have with that is, unless we start acknowledging that the problem, it actually is a cultural problem that has nothing to do with white, black, green, or yellow. It has to do with how we are going to raise our society as a young families. Mm-hmm. Then I don't know if we'll ever be able to plug the holes in when they get to be 15. Does that make sense?
Well, and I hear the it starts at home argument more frequently than I hear almost anything else. That's always when you talk about the inadequacy of the school system. We always end up pretty quick back to what about the parents?
Right.
Well, the thing is, the parents don't take massive amounts of tax dollars and make promises on delivery. And there's no way in the world to manage how someone parents their children. But there is a very direct and easy way to manage the performance of a school system, and that can be changed. It can be critically evaluated, and resources can be, through policy, can be changed. For example, school vouchers. I'm sorry, it's not that we've got this idea that the school systems, it's their money, and it's the teachers' money, and it's the teachers' union money, and it's the Board of Education's money. And if you beg nice enough, and if your situation is terrible enough, we might give you a little bit of money or some kind of small little sliver of opportunity where you can escape this failing school system and send your kids somewhere else. Nobody ever says, let's go eat at the government restaurant tonight. Nobody ever says, let's go down to the DMV. It's going to be a real fun evening. Nobody ever says, let's go down to the, government anything.
Look, UPS and FedEx started for a reason.
Yes, and exactly. It's a perfect example. They lose money at the post office, even though it's a monopoly, putting pieces of paper in boxes. Meanwhile, UPS and FedEx turn record profits doing the exact same thing or something very similar. They need to push school choice, because there's always this argument that the state knows more and cares more about the kids than the parents, and that the kids are dumb or the parents are dumb, and that what would they do with this money? And we're the bureaucrat, we're the expert bureaucrats, and if you take money out of the failing school, well, you hate the schools. No, we just need to give people an opportunity to try it. I'll put it this way. People say, well, we don't know if school vouchers will work. I know we will. The market always finds a way to work. It's a beautiful thing about the American market. But here's what we do know. We do know what we're doing now sucks. We know. We've been doing it 40 years. We can point at that and go, yep, that right there, exactly how we're doing it, does not work. We don't have to do another experiment. We've done 40 years of experiments. We've tinkered with it. We've put more money in it. We've hired layers of bureaucrats. Doesn't work. Meanwhile, if you gave every person $11,000 or even $7,000, somebody would throw up a General Steel building within 100 feet of the church. They'd put those kids in there, and they would be reading at higher levels, and it would be costing less money, and it would happen within a handful of months.
Because they would be focused on what the education system is supposed to be, I think. And I think you said earlier that conservatives sometimes are not the best, first at listening, the fact that people have different opinions, I think, but also telling stories. And I think the story there is, in order to break the cycle, you don't put things around people to help insulate them with the cycle. So as the kid moves through the educational system, we put enough stuff around them to just let them manage the depravity, manage the problem as they go. And then we release them into the wild and never teach them that there's another way. I think the best way to teach people or to break a cycle is through education, not when you're having to go to college, because not everybody's meant to go to college.
Yeah.
But when you're in first and second and third grade, really, 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 really focus on the basic fundamental things. And that's how you break a cycle.
Yeah. Well, and take them out of it. Take what's the worst that can happen. It can't be any worse than it is now. And people are like, oh, what would happen? I'm like, well, look what's already. We know this is going to happen, and it's terrible. So, and I'll give you a perfect example. We spend $6,000 a year to send our oldest, who is 8, to a private little Christian school. There's one principal. They're in 3 buildings. They have one lady that does some sort of administrative work there. $6,000 a year. It is a fantastic, phenomenal experience. There's not layers of bureaucracy. The kids can be disciplined if they need to. And people have to be, you have to go through a process to say, okay, this is how we're going to teach your kids. This is what we're going to teach them. Are you okay with that? And if you're not okay with that, you can go somewhere else.
Yep.
And so people just need options like that. They used to teach, 10 kids of various ages in a community in a log schoolhouse with a slate and a piece of chalk. And they were only there for maybe 3 or 4 hours a day. And now we've got layers and layers of bureaucracy, people broken up by specific subjects.
Well,
and
the schools now are daycare centers a lot of times because they
are
get dropped off at 6:30 or 7:30 and they're not picked up till 6 or. And I'm not blaming anybody. I'm just saying the reality of it is school is not what school used to be, and some of that's okay, and some of it's not. But again, you got to be able to have these hard conversations. When you start doing your interviews more or your videos, are you going to have people on that may come from things from a different perspective than you, so you can dialogue around it? Are you going to bring people on and you be more of a journalist asking questions, and it's they're presenting you're asking the journalistic questions?
I think a lot of our, we're going to be following specific stories, but we're also going to be trying to, in many ways, bring on guests that can educate people. Because a lot of folks just don't know. I mean, if you go to the mainstream media for your news, you would think the 1619 project was a good thing. You'd think, oh, this makes sense, it's good. But when it's explained to you, you're like, holy crap, what a steaming pile of horse crap this is. And if you look at critical race theory and people talk in these crazy circles about different oppression groups, intersectionality, and then when you actually learn about it for 15 or 20 minutes, you're like, this is completely unworkable for humans to have any dignity. And for there to be any ideas that can ever be shared, this is an unworkable framework.
I will challenge your people. Yeah. I will challenge the people that go to your site to approach what you just said, though, with an open mind, because it will be real easy in the world we live in to go, oh, that's racist. That's in this box. You've got to approach it with, we're talking about the facts and the principles and the policies. And I'm worried that you're going to start getting, and I know you don't care.
Yeah. And the thing is, I've learned this, if nothing else, from the left. You have to unapologetically present your position, because it seems to me that the one thing I do admire about the left is they have a little agenda, and they don't care if it's good for people or not. They get it through. Now, that part I disagree with. But if conservatives were as proactive and as courageous about presenting policy and frameworks that actually improve people's lives as the left are at presenting things that don't, we would be a lot further off in this country, because some things just don't work. And you have to be careful not to give them a lot of quarter, which people do. I mean, victimhood culture is like, well, let's listen to this. I'm like, no, it'd be like somebody saying, today we're going to interview somebody about child pornography. Because there's kind of there's a little bit of some people are kind of like, well, maybe this is okay. What if it's consensual? And I could never do that. I mean, there's some things that are just like, you can't let the other viewpoint.
Some ideas are bad.
Some ideas are bad, and
some ideas are just, some things are not. Yeah. There's no redeeming qualities about them at all.
No, there's not. Yeah. And so for a long time, I think the bureaucracy has been given a lot of respect that it doesn't deserve. I think that the quote unquote 5,000 different groups of oppressed people have been given a lot of the oxygen in the room. But I tell you who has not been represented very well over the last 10 or 20 years, and that's just working taxpayers and property owners and small business owners. Those are the last people nobody ever cares about what they think. Nobody ever gives them a voice. It's always about some oppressed group. It's always about some kind of large organization full of some kind of whatever. But what about the people that are funding all this, that are quietly going about their lives, watching everything they like about the country go to crap? Could we maybe talk about what they need for a little while? And for some reason, that conversation is taboo. And I think we need to have it more often.
I agree with you. And the good thing about what you just said, and if people will really listen, what you just said, the hardworking people that go to work every day and pay the bill, that had nothing to do with race. And that makes my heart happy. That makes my heart happy.
No, and because I got all kinds of buddies that are weird and are different colors and come from different backgrounds. And I've never had an issue with race. I've almost got engaged to a black girl, dated her for, when it comes to that stuff, I don't care. I mean,
well, it has nothing to do.
Yeah, that stuff doesn't matter to me. Now, at the same time, I'm not one of these people like, I don't have 1,000 black friends because I work in a little office here. I've got the same 13 friends I've had forever. I see 2 people when I come here. I go home, I go to church, I go to the gym. Like, I just don't have a lot of people are like, I've got 1,000. I don't have a very diverse lifestyle. I live in Brainerd. I see,
But you know what it is,
people,
though.
y'all
People
talk walks like, yeah.
But people will assign intention to you real fast, and to people. We do that.
Yeah.
In this culture we live now, is I assign me the purity of heart because I know my intention. I judge you based off other criteria. So I will give myself all kinds of, leeway and slack and forgiveness. But you, sir, you just don't really measure up.
Mm-hmm.
And so we just assign intent without really knowing the intent. Again, it goes back to, are you disagreeing with me on policy and procedures? Or are you disagreeing with me on race? I personally want to be able to have that discussion so I can know who the real racists are and who the people that have some solutions to problems are, has no idea what they look like. So.
I would, and to wrap up, I guess one big thing that I think that we will be talking about a lot at the Tennessee Conservative News, and it really is my framework for almost everything that I think about, and that is this. If it would not work in my home, if it would not work in our extended family, if it would not work in a small neighborhood, and if I would not give the advice or recommendation to a friend, I can't ever support it as a policy. And so, in so many people's dealings in life, you would never give someone an excuse if they were on hard times to lay on your couch forever. You would never teach someone who had gone through a rough experience that they had no part in it, that their future was dark and everything was based upon something somebody else did. If you wouldn't if a framework for a school or a government system or a way of getting things done wouldn't work in business, it's a good chance it won't work in government either. And so every time I look at a problem or I look at a situation, I look through it through the lens of, what if the government didn't even exist? Would this work anywhere else? And so often we look at it and go, no, that's unworkable. No, we'd never do that program. No, we'd never treat different people in our neighborhood. We'd never tax them differently. We would never treat them impartially. We would never make them or make it compulsory for them to do something. And so we do it in government for some reason, and it sounds reasonable and normal, when so often I don't think it is. And we excuse things, tolerate things, and advocate things in the realm of detached government we'd never do in our real life. And I think that's the wellspring of a lot of problems that we have locally and nationally.
Well, it seems to me too that a lot of your focus is on something that I know I've got friends that believe that most politics, and I don't know why now locally it matters, but it does more as far as Democrat and Republicans. But most politics is local. They affect my life on a daily basis. National is very important. I'm not saying it's not important, because it's all trickle down one way or the other.
National politics is like soap operas for men and women, because they're evil people, there are heroes on each side, there's unique stories, it's covered, it's dramatized. The same stuff could be done if there was enough coverage for local things, but we don't. The drama's not built up around it. It's not very sophisticated,
and we know them.
People tune, and we know them, and so it's like people tune out. But hopefully, we can bring some attention to some of these things, because, like, for example, you go look at the Chattanooga City Council meeting, and the County Commission meeting, and the school board meeting, and you go to their YouTube channel. Do you know how many people watch those things on average?
No.
Take a guess.
Well, now that you've asked it, I'm pretty good at when questions are rhetorical, but I'll say 100.
23 to like 30 out of a county of 400,000. And so covering that sort of stuff, so we know what's going on, and bringing a distillation of that to people so they know what their leaders are doing, and keeping up with the delegation in Tennessee. Those are things that really matter. And for example, I started working on this stuff about panhandling and trash, and it's just awful in Brainerd right now. I've never seen it like this. I've been there for 13 years, and posted something in the little neighborhood app.
Oh, I saw it. And I saw your Facebook post now.
And the Facebook app too, and Facebook app, the Facebook. And so I put that in there, and to her credit, Carol Burst sends me an email. She copies somebody in the mayor's office and and the city attorney. Like, what can we do about this? I'm like, well, they've been solving these types of problems since ancient Rome. I'm happy to dialogue with you about it, but you don't need to let them stand on the street. And we need to mow the grass and pick up the trash. And if we don't have enough money to mow the grass and pick up the trash, then we need to fire some people shuffling papers somewhere so we can hire some people that mow grass and pick up trash. If you would like me to lay a plan out in a piece of notebook paper for you, I can hand it to you. It's one of these, I hate it when people want to dialogue about stuff that you know what the solution to the problem is.
Take that problem to your wife and get her to tell you how to. She'll tell you how to handle that.
Yes, and so I put it this way: if I can't put a keg of beer by the interstate and pass out free beers, and if that's illegal, and if I would get arrested, and if a cop would come pick me up, they should probably do the same for panhandling. I mean, the thing is, like, there's certain things you can't do on the city street, and I bet if I set up a hot dog cart and tried to make money without a business license or run a hot dog cart right there at the intersection, they'd shut me down immediately. But they won't run panhandlers off, and it's just completely confusing. So it doesn't help them, and it doesn't help homeless condition. It doesn't help
we might need to start doing a weekly podcast, dude, because the problem with that is when they get out, they're going to leave your community and come to mine.
What? Your community, they run about. I'm just saying they shouldn't let people panhandle at all on the city streets. Now put it this way: if they won't let me run a hot dog stand or sell something there,
right,
then maybe I'd be okay. But they won't. They won't let you. They'll let you do certain things. They won't let you do other things. But the thing is, like, what happens over time? And people are like, oh, this just sounds like homeless heartlessness. You let this stuff go on for a while. You let the streets get dirty. You let the grass be unmowed. You let people like make an uncomfortable environment. People look around and they're like, I don't want to move here. And then people look around and go, I don't want to live here.
Yeah.
And then basically you end up with Brainerd Road's got its problems as it is. I've lived there for 13 years. I love it, but we got our issues. And before long, Brainerd Road turns into Rossville Boulevard, and then it turns into Dodds Avenue, and then it turns into God knows what. We got enough places to fix in Chattanooga now that need help. We don't need to create more places that need help. And a lot of that is quality of life issues. People don't like to hear about it, talk about it. It's a heartless bunch of bullcrap, but everybody knows it. And then they act like to bring it up is something controversial. I mean, I guess if you can't think it's controversial, but if you can, you're like, that's a problem.
You know what? I'm going to end up watching your videos. Just so you know now, you're going to be in the middle of doing one of your videos, and in the back of your brain, it's going to tickle your little brain back here, and you're going to go.
Very small brain.
It's tiny. We're all tiny brain people.
Tiny Republican conservative brain.
Very clinging to your guns and your Bible, dude. But back here in the back of your head, you're going to think Clint Powell is talking to the camera right now. I'll be watching your videos, talking to you and whoever you're having the conversation with.
I'll be scraping the bottom of the barrel for entertainment. That's all I got to say.
Well, no, because these kind of topics, though, I think are what I'm looking forward to on the website, because I'm ready to hear not only from a conservative perspective. This is, I guess, what I'll wrap it up with this. I'm not ready just to hear the news and the topics that we're missing from a conservative perspective. I'm ready to hear the solutions.
Yeah, the solutions.
That's what I'm ready.
We will be talking about solutions, because that's my favorite part. I mean, we talk about at left, but I mean, there's things that we can practically do to practically fix problems. You talk about common sense. People are talking about common sense and things of that nature. Oh, I got a good funny story. I'm not going to tell. I can't tell it now. I'll tell it next time. I'll try to save it if I can remember it. But it's common sense approach. I mean, like, people act like sometimes there needs to be a bunch of dialogue and a bunch of community involvement. Sometimes, like, people, like leaders, just need to go fix the damn problem before there's a meeting. Before there's a meeting, before there's a committee gathered, we know what the problem is. How about we just go fix it without anybody even knowing, and then we won't even have to have a committee meeting. And that's what I hope ends up happening with this situation is the council goes, yeah, we need to. Yeah, this is probably going to be a problem. Yeah, we got trash. We're going to mow the grass. I mean, let's just go fix it. And let's not even have a meeting about it. Can we have
a Zoom meeting though? Let's have a Zoom meeting about it. That's not a real meeting. That's a Zoom meeting.
Yes, I know. I'm gonna have to. They said if we were going to get together about this homeless issue, they're like, we can meet at my office. We follow CDC guidelines. And I was like, well, why don't we just do it by Zoom so we don't have to all dress up in a damn hazmat suit, and I don't have to feel awkward and uncomfortable. It's just whatever it needs to happen. So we can have this meeting. I don't care what we can.
If you do have the Zoom meeting, do it from the corner of the street while you're asking for money. I dare you.
We're trying to get some money out here. Hold on.
Yeah, to raise money for the TennesseeConservativeNews.com. I'm asking Cars for money while I'm on with the city council. Hold on one second. You got $1 for the that was. I'm just kidding now.
I'm trying to get this in while it's still legal. I'm afraid they're going to pass an ordinance.
Well, I will say, and that leads to the bigger topic. I can't wait till you talk about that, because I am a big believer that mental health in the world we live in now just gets neglected on a lot of fronts, whether it's you pick the topic. I just think as a society we have I've got friends that suffer from some mental health issues, and they're not the ones that are assigned to them. They have some issues,
Yeah,
and there's really some limited places to go if they have no money.
Mental health is a big issue, and I think a lot of it is truly mental health, and then a lot of it is we've got I think a lot of things just culturally happen in our society, and it's weird. I think a lot of it, the deteriorating or disappearing Protestant work ethic. I know people, it's going to sound very sexist. I think men and women were made to work and to do things. And Alan West, you talked about, said something, and I saw him speak probably 12, 15 years ago now, when I was on the stage presenting for American Majority in Florida, I think it was. And he said self-esteem comes from doing esteemable things. And it comes from having a sense of value. And it comes from also, I think, a love of country. I think it comes from a love of family. I think it comes from feeling like you're loved and you're in a good place. And there's so much negativism, and there's so much kind of hatred for things that used to be revered. I think that's created a lot of psychological disorders. And then, you do have, my family has a long line of mental disorders on both sides, as is evidenced in my conversation here today. And so I've seen it, so I'm not downplaying it, and I've watched it affect people. So. And I probably got a little bit of it myself.
But you know what happens? When we talked about it, the real problems gets lost in the politically correct problem. That's what happens. The real problem of mental health gets swept up in this big wave of we can't have a conversation about hard things anymore.
No, you're right.
But I'm looking forward to
it. My wife is going to wonder where the hell I am.
Nope, I'm done. I said, I'm good, man. It's an hour and a half. I apologize.
All right, well, dude, I love it. It's been fun. It's been fantastic. I've enjoyed this. I've enjoyed this conversation a lot. I just wish I'd had a beer while we were doing it. And so I'll definitely come again. Thanks for having me on.
No problem. Best of luck to you. TennesseeConservativeNews.com. Brandon, I appreciate it, man. Sorry I kept you so long. See you, buddy.
Hey, I enjoyed it, buddy. Take care.
All right, man. Bye.